back in the fall of 1962 as part of the agreement between the AFM and I believe it was phonograph employers at that time. But anyway, so let me just get off the next slide here. And okay, so I'm just going to give you a 2024 overview because that's the last full year that we have all our data for. Just briefly, we have over 16,000 members in the fund. 4,800 of those are what we call actives and other people who are still actively working, participating. We have over 4,100 pensioners and beneficiaries, and that number is growing every month. And we have roughly $7,400 what we call vested inactives. In other words, these are people, they're vested, they have entitlement to a benefit, they just haven't been playing for a number of years in the plan. And in some cases, they're just not the age yet to retire. Some cases they are, and they haven't contacted us, and we may not have contact information for some of them because again, it's one of the things that we always stress to members is keep us updated on where you are so that when you move, we know where to contact you when it's time. Our rate of return on investments last year was 14.4%, which is pretty good for the field. The market value of our assets at the end of last year were just a shade over $1 billion. So basically it was $1,050 million at that time. The amount of annual contributions that we get from the employers, because we are employer contributing only, was 10.4 million, which has been, other than the COVID years, that's been pretty consistent for the last number of years, usually about $10 million roughly in employer contributions. But you can see that, we paid out $51 million in benefits last year. So it's, the contributions are now what's paying for the benefits. It's the return of the funds and investments with the investment manager. That's what's generating the money to pay the benefits. So let me change that. Feel free if you have any questions. I mean, there's a slide at the end saying questions, but if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to put your hand up or indicate that you have a question, and we'll take it. I'll take it right at that point. Okay. Go to the next slide. So as I was saying, the fund is funded through contributions by employers because we are registered as an employer contributing plan only. So employee contributions are not required, nor are they permitted. You have to be an AFM or /CFM member working in pensionable engagements in order to have contributions sent to the fund on your behalf, which I think everyone who's attending, you're all members of your local, so you're all doing pensionable work where that's where the contributions are being made by your employers. Just to let you know, for the Isabel, for the new people or newer people who may be viewing this in the future, the AFM, CFM, and locals have provided for pension on all types of musical work, including freelance work such as recording, streaming, teaching. In other words, if you're teaching, giving private music lessons, live performances, and these are done through the collective bargaining agreements or the local tariff of fees. And the reason I was emphasizing teaching is for some members, that's almost like the gateway into the fund. You may be maybe a young musician, may be hard to get gigs in your local that an employer will sign a local contract for. One way to have contributions is through, if you're giving private music lessons to, students, either children or adults. So it's like if you're teaching an adult, they're the adult, they're the ones who are signing the contract. If you're teaching a child, it'll be, the contract would be between you and their parents. A lot of locals now have a scale for teaching, like music lessons. Um, I, Julia, does your local have one in the tariff of fees?
Yes, we do. It's $50 an hour.
Okay, so there you go. So if you're doing that, you just use your locals, I guess, miscellaneous contract or the standard CFM miscellaneous contract for that, and you're you remit it through your local. Okay, next slide. Type of pension benefits. So this is what some of you are going to be interested in. So we have what's called normal, which is normal just means that's the full unreduced benefit that you would get at 65, i.e. the normal retirement age. We offer early retirement benefits, which you can apply for as early as age 55. Obviously, if you're taking it before 65, the benefit would be reduced to take into account the earlier age you're starting. We have something called a deferred benefit. Again, this is for someone who is vested and then becomes inactive. Um, at the time that happens, they would receive something called a termination statement with an optional letter. And one of the options would be you could leave your pension, you leave the value of your benefit in the fund to be paid to you as what's called a deferred monthly benefit, which if you're taking it at age 65, it's just the normal benefit, or if you're taking it before 65, it's just the early retirement benefit. We do offer disability benefits. Now, it's pretty strict in that the disability benefit is payable only if you are deemed permanently and totally disabled, not just from doing musical work, but from doing any work of any kind. So it's pretty strict. Over the years, we have had a number of people receiving this. So basically, what happens with the disability benefit, you would get the normal, whatever you would normally get at age 65. If you're become disabled while you're an active member of the fund and are approved for disability benefit, you would get the monthly benefit you would normally get at age 65 at the time you become disabled. So yeah, that like I said, pretty strict, but if we do have a number of people who are getting that. And of course, survivor benefit is referring to uh, either you're on a pension and then when you pass away, depending on the type of benefit you're on, we'd be paying your survivor or designated beneficiary a benefit. Or if you pass away before you actually apply for your own pension benefit, uh, whoever you've designated as a beneficiary, either if you have a spouse, it'd be automatically be your spouse, or if you don't have a spouse and you've designated a beneficiary with us, they would receive a lump sum benefit. Um, Getting back to if you have a spouse, they will always have the option of a monthly benefit for their lifetime with a 10-year guarantee or a lump sum benefit, a lump sum payout. So,
Just to interrupt here, Humbert,
sure.
I see Hillary has her hand raised.
You just have to unmute yourself, Hillary. There
There
you
we
go.
go. Sorry. I just had a question about the disability benefit. If a person becomes disabled, who who determines and like how is it determined if you're
Well, you have to have a doctor certify you as being permanently and totally disabled.
okay?
We would, if we get an inquiry from someone, we send them the medical report for the doctor to fill out. We send also there's a letter for the doctor to explain to them what our definition of disability is, and that it's permanently totally disabled from doing any employment, not just musical employment, because in the past, the example we always use is that, if you have for example, a trumpet player who has a lip injury, you can no longer play the trumpet. He won't be getting a disability benefit because if that's the only injury, he's still able to perform any other type of employment. So it's not just, as I said, it's not just being disabled from your musical employment. It's from being able to do any type of employment. So it's like I said, it's pretty strict, and it's usually people who have come down with something very catastrophic.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Not to say that we haven't, like I said, we have paid them out, and what would the process that would happen is uh, the member would have, fill out the form, have their doctor fill out the form, mail to court. They would send it in. It goes to a committee made up of a couple of the board of trustees, uh, and then they either approve or they may require further information. I think a couple of times in the past we've had the person at no expense to themselves, but you have them, another doctor examine them for a second, just a second opinion. But like I said, that's only happened a couple of times in my knowledge, in in the vast time that I've been here. It's usually, like I said, usually when people are applying for that, it's because something pretty drastic has happened. Because I always tell them when they first um, inquire about it, how it's just it's not just your musical employment being just unable to do that. It's doing anything. And once they understand that, if they're still continuing to go ahead, it's usually because they fall in that category. So I think most of you are probably this, but for those again who are maybe seeing this in the future, talk about vesting. So basically, vesting just means that you've fulfilled all the requirements and are entitled to a pension benefit from the fund at retirement, whenever that age is for you. Um, when you have the first contribution made on your behalf by your employer, that's when you become a plan participant. But when you actually fulfill the requirements for plan membership, that's when you become a plan member and you vest at the same time. So basically, vesting happens when you have 24 months of contributions for pensionable engagements in the plan, where you're not having a 6 consecutive calendar month break in service. So let's say someone does, you have a new member of the local, they signed up, joined yesterday. Today they did their first gig with an employer and there's pension on it. So they file the contract, it gets sent to the local forwards it to us with the contribution. So John Smith has done an engagement on November 24th, 2025. He will become a member of the pension fund and vests on November 24th, 2027, as long as he doesn't go 6 calendar months without a contribution. And the way we count the 6 calendar months is, okay, he's done something today in November. So we would look at December. Has he done anything in December in the future as time passes on? If he hadn't done anything in December, December would be the first month of a 6 calendar month break. So basically, he would have to have something done by the end of May 31st, 2026, in order to avoid that first 6 month break. So if someone is, for example, they're giving private music lessons. So they have a group of students who they're giving lessons to on a weekly, monthly basis. So they're doing these lessons on a monthly basis. So you're doing it for 12 months a year for 2 years without any kind of a break. They're going to become a vested member in 2 years, and the contributions that we've received on their behalf for that period, that's what their benefit at that point is going to be based on. Um, Again, like I said, as was telling Julie earlier, this was a presentation I did for St. John back in 2021. So this amendment could apply to a number of you people who are, if you've been busy working, if you hadn't become vested, just that during the period of COVID, um, from April 1, 2020 through December 31st, 2021, we were not counting that period towards the 6 month break. So we had some members who they may have had their first engagement January, February, March of 2020. COVID hits, they couldn't do anything else for like the next year and a half. The engagements they did pre COVID in those early months of 2020 were not subject to cancellation because we realized COVID, you couldn't go out and do a lot of gigs. You couldn't do gigs for so that the trustees decided that would not count towards any break period. So then after that period, if they did it like an engagement in, January, February 2022, at that point, they're now a vested member. Looking at the period, the engagements they did early 2020, and now it's 2022, and they did another engagement, they're now vested and a plan member. Their accrued benefit might not have been very much at that time if they only had 3 or 4 engagements. But once you're vested and you do any further pensionable employment, that stuff just gets added to what's already here. So just on a go forward basis, they'll just build up your benefit.
I think Isabel has a question just before you change slides.
Sure.
Hey, yeah, I just had a question about getting vested. So if you do hit that 6 month window, you don't have any gigs, you don't teach, you lose that.
Well, yeah,
Do you start
that
over? And then
yeah.
what happens to any money you've already put in?
Well, first off, remember it's the employer who's paying this because the musicians can't make their own contributions because we're registered as employer contributing only. And I know people say, but yeah, but it's coming, and in some cases, like you may be depending on the type of engagement, you're collecting it from the employer. They're paying you the total fee for the gig, which includes the pension, and then you may be remitting it on their behalf on your own check. And if that's happening, then what the leader should be doing on that case is actually on the check should be in the lower left-hand corner or the memo section of the check. You write in paid on behalf of the employer because the employer is actually is paying that. But yes, so the example I used was like if someone did something today and then they didn't do anything until like let's say October of next year, that's their next pensionable engagement. The contribution that they came in on their behalf for the engagement they did today would be subject to cancellation. So in effect, they would be starting over with that engagement in October of next year. So now we're saying, okay, that's now you had a break. The previous engagement is canceled. So now October is the next engagement. We get a contribution for you. That's now we're looking at, okay, 24 months from October, you become a member again. You become a member if you don't have that 6 calendar month break. So
Okay.
basically, if I know it can be tough in some locals, but basically, if you can just do something every 3 or 4 months for the first 2 years till you get your membership invest, then even if you're just doing 1 or 2 gigs a year after that, it'll always get added to what's already here, to what you're already vested in. The important thing is getting vested, becoming a plan member, investing at the same time. Because once you're vested, even if you have a subsequent break, now instead of a 6 month break, we'd be looking at a 24-month break. Your benefit is not lost. We just, at that point, by law, we have to send you what's called a termination statement saying you've had a 24-month break. This is the benefit you've accrued. This is what the value of it is at the time of your 24-month break. And here's a letter outlining the options you have. So you don't lose your benefit. One of the options, of course, is you can always stay in the plan, and then if you do, as soon as you do a new engagement, you become active again. You invest in those new contributions. So you would become earlier on one of the earlier slides where I said we had vested in active people. Those are people who are vested and had a long period of inactivity, so it become deferred, or they have a deferred benefit. But if any of them came back and did an engagement now, they become active again and they vest in that new contribution automatically. So as I said, if you're already vested, you don't have to worry about a 6 month break. Is that clear, Isabel?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, next one. As I said, yeah, if you have any questions, like I said, I'm not seeing everyone, but Julie, I'm sure Julie is. So she's just jump in, Julia, again, as you have, and just tell me if someone's got a question. So now, again, here's what a couple of people are interested in: retirement. So as I said, normal retirement is at age 65. That's when you can get your full unreduced benefit. You can take your retirement benefit at any time between ages of 55, and that would be early. It would be reduced if you take it at 55, or 71. The reason it says 71 is because under the Income Tax Act, they say you're supposed to, by the end of the year that you turn 71 in, you're supposed to apply and start receiving any pension income you're entitled to. So that's why we have members who they're vested, and the year they're turning 71. If they haven't applied yet, we're always contacting them either by letter or email saying, "Hey, Jim, Susan, Isabel, according to our records, you turned 71 this year. You haven't applied yet. Here's a set of application forms. You have to apply before you turn 71 and for the end of the year. Uh, Fill out the forms, the process. Because the reason that we're on that is because we'll get members who, let's say, we maybe lost track of, or they lost track of us, forgot they were even a member of the fund, and they come when they're like 75, 76. They're vested, have entitlements to a benefit. We start the paperwork. Uh, I normally have to write to CRA and get permission to pay the benefit because this is a benefit that we're supposed to start 5 years, for example, 5 years ago. Now, CRA has never said no, but we always have to follow the rules, follow the law, and so uh, they're usually quick. But I mean, in the past, I've had cases where it took like 6 months to a year before we heard back from them. So I always tell them, remember, it's you know, uh, I don't think any of you are in this boat, or if you're turning 71 this year. If you turn 71 this year, you're you've run out of time. I'm basically doing the last payroll of the year today. But as I said, it's just an Income Tax Act requirement. You have to take any retirement benefits you have before the end of the year you turn 71. Same thing with, if someone has RSPs, they're supposed to convert them before the end of that year to, give them some kind of a pension income. So, okay, that's my little spiel about that. Just uh, payment of pension benefit is not automatic because I've had members who've contacted me. They say, I turned 65, 3 months ago, and I haven't gotten any payments in my bank yet. And then we'll check our records. We'll see, well, you haven't filled out any application forms. Uh, so you have to, to get the benefit, you have to complete and submit all the necessary application forms, which is they're not onerous. It's not too many. They're not too many forms. Basically, an application, marital status declaration, and a direct deposit form. So, and of course, anyone has any problems or questions when they're filling out the forms, myself or my assistant Preson, more than happy to help them answer any questions that they have. Okay. So the next couple of slides are just again, there's a I won't go too much detail with this. It's just that a few years back, federal government made an amendment to the Income Tax Act. And this was from something that they originally announced in their 2019 budget. Basically, this change affects the fund is that, and sorry, as well as most other multi-employer plans that have pensioners that return to employment. Because as I have learned, and as you guys all know, musicians may retire and take their benefit, but most of them don't stop working. So as a result of these income tax regulation changes, the fund can no longer accept contributions on account of reemployed pensioners if the pensioner does not receive a benefit from those contributions. So what does that mean? Basically, these changes do not and have not affected pensioners prior to the end of the calendar year that they are turning 71. As under the plan, they are eligible to receive a benefit from the fund as regards to what's called their post-retirement contributions. And basically, I will do a review every spring of the prior calendar year for those pensioners who've been working post retirement. And if they have enough contributions on their behalf to be eligible, they will get an additional amount added to their monthly benefit. That's calculated basically using an annuity rate because we have to treat post-retirement contributions differently than pre-retirement contributions. So as I said, these changes will apply to pensions that work after the end of the year in which they turn 71 years old. And these changes were were came into effect and applied to agreements that were dated after 2021. So, as I said at the time, we were talking to the authorities on how to deal with that. So basically, if you're doing a CBA that came into effect after January 1, 2022, or something under the local tariff fees, and if you're like a 72-year-old, unless it's we can't accept those contributions. But like I said, I don't think we have anyone in this group who has to worry about that at this point. So I'll just go to the next slide, which is talking about communications. So every year there's an annual report that is sent to members by both email, and it's also posted on our website. There are a couple of information series on our website. Basically, they're one-page information sheets. A couple of series. One calls "What Happens If," and a couple of them are like, "What happens if I get a divorce?" or "What happens if I work in the U.S.?" Other things are the other series is "Things You Need to Know," and a couple of those, one I mentioned to Julia earlier before everyone came on, was things you need to know was like a for employers, for leaders, a contract. What has to be on a contract? So there's like a contract checklist of this is the information that should be on the contract. This is how the contract gets to us. Goes to the local first. The local vets the contract, make sure the amounts are correct, that the scale is correct showing on it, and they will forward it to us along with the payment from the employer. Then we'll process it, post it to the members account. We also do quarterly e-newsletters. I think there's one, the latest one just went out on Friday. And we send that to all those members who have registered their email with us. So if you haven't already done so, you can. The newsletters are also all posted on the website as well. So even if you don't get one because you haven't registered your email, you can always go to the website and you can see all the newsletters that we've posted there. Again, my last point is basically just make sure the fund office has your email address and also your regular address, because we mail out the annual statements. Those go out by mail as a requirement. So when you move, I know you're probably good about you're letting your local know that you've changed your address, but also let us know so that we will know where to send your annual statements to, and then any other correspondence that's going out by mail. And basically that's it. Now it's the question period. So let's set up the questions. I don't. I won't. I'll, I won't stop sharing in case you guys want to go back to one of the slides where it has stopped. That's fine. Okay. So yeah. Anyone have any